Welcome everyone to this AMA. I run a community called Public Lab. So I saw Nawaz was asking, is this a regular thing? So part of the community, we do AMA with different types of entrepreneurs, like 1 or 2 times a month. So it's regular, but this is actually the first time we throw out the link on Twitter and invite a few more people to join us. Usually it's just for the members. I think this is the 8th time we are doing this. And when I saw Michelle, I think 2-3 months ago, who is this new person on Twitter? YC back, Typedream, pretty amazing. And then one day she started to write very transparently about her journey. So I had her name in mind. And then later on, I reached out to Michelle, and Michelle was very kind to say yes to this. So that was how I got Michelle on here. Michelle, we're all very excited to hear from you because we read your profile and all that. Let's just get to know you as a person. Like, can you briefly just tell us like who you are, like where are you based now, what you're working on?
Yes. Hey everyone, I'm Michelle. I'm very excited to be here and thank you so much, Kevin, for hosting this. I was born and raised in Indonesia in Southeast Asia. I moved to San Francisco, USA for college back in 2015. I got a day job right after graduating, but then I applied to YC and dropped my day job just 3 months after. So that's a quick intro about me.
Cool. Okay, let's not get into the business yet. Let me just ask, like, if a friend, like a best friend, were to describe you, how would he or she put it?
Okay, I would say they will think that I'm a risk taker in the sense that I'm not afraid to take a path that is outside of the norm. What I mean by the norm is, for example, back in college, people would focus on getting a high GPA, joining clubs, finding internships. Whereas for me, all I did was, my GPA was whatever, it was okay. But instead, I did random stuff like doing crypto arbitrage and doing random projects back in college. Another example of not following the norm is when I quit my day job just 3 months after graduating. My friends said that I was crazy to do that because it was just 3 months after graduating. I didn't have any savings or anything like that, but I just decided to bet on it because that was what I liked.
Wow. I like that because 10 years ago, I was in college. And then I was the one who go to the library all the time to study. Okay, let's jump to what you're working on right now. So Typedream, I'm very curious, like how did it happen? I know that there are 5 co-founders, but can you tell us like how did someone come up with the idea and then where is it right now?
Yeah. So I actually met my 4 other co-founders in our first computer science class back in college. I was lucky enough that I met them, and we've been building random projects ever since college. And actually, in terms of finding the idea for Typedream itself, it wasn't really an idea. We just encountered that problem when we were building our previous project, which was an authentication solution like sign up or login form for no-code website builders like Webflow, WordPress. So we were building that authentic sign up or login flow for those no-code website builders when people started asking for a Notion integration. So we were then surprised, like, why would you need a sign up or a login system for a Notion page? Like, it's just a note-taking app, right? And so we decided to talk to them more, and turns out they were building their websites on top of Notion. So which led to another surprise, like, why would they use Notion to make websites when there are a bunch of other good website builders that are really famous, like Webflow and WordPress? That was when we interviewed more people, and they said that they love Notion because of its interface. Like, the interface is really familiar. It's like Microsoft Word or Google Docs. Yeah, also the interface is this thing called what you see is what you get, in which you can type on the exact block you want to edit right away, instead of other website builders in which you would click on the block and then you would fill out what you want to fill out on the on a pop-up form on the left side of the editor usually. So okay, we got that idea. People like Notion and they built websites on top of Notion. We then decided to dig deeper, what's missing from Notion to website. And we narrowed it down to two important features: buttons and navigation bars. Because Notion is specifically made for note taking, they don't have buttons and navigation bars. So we just decided to make a Notion-like editor, but the functions are catered to website building. So it's basically just finding a problem and we presented our solution instead of finding an idea.
That's interesting, because for my new project, Showing Up Right,
Mhm.
I'm using Notion, and then I use another tool to like just put it on a domain. And I
Uh-huh.
guess for me, it's definitely how fast it is, because I'm still
Mhm.
early in the process. I don't need something
Mhm.
fancy. But I'm a bit
Mhm.
confused about Typedream. So it's not built on Notion, right?
Not built
It's a
on Notion.
standalone website builder, but it's
Yes.
as easy as Notion.
Yes. I would
Okay.
say like how it looks and everything else looks almost exactly like Notion. It's just that our features are catered to website building. So instead of having those fancy text formatting, since we're not a note-taking app, we just decided to have other website building specific features like a built-in navigation bar and buttons.
Got it. I'm very curious because I went to a YC first interview as well for one time.
Hmm.
So I guess a lot
Yeah.
of us here, like, we're very interested of your YC experience. So
Uh-huh.
did Type Dream come out after the YC batch, or do you go in with this idea already?
We actually got into YC with a completely different idea, even before the passwordless sign up or login thing.
Oh,
So we actually got into YC when we were building a US stock trading app, but for Southeast Asia. So we were
oh,
planning to sell US stocks in Southeast Asia, but then we were faced with financial regulations and the capital needed to build a US stock trading app was really high. So we pivoted mid-batch to that sign up or login. And then after completing the batch, we pivoted again to Typedream.
okay.
Mhm.
So I guess with all the YC experience, that helps you with all the pivoting and thinking of a new direction.
Exactly. Even without YC, I would say for every failures, I learned from those failures and I wouldn't know how to succeed, but at least I would know what I did wrong last time, that I would know what to avoid in order to build a better product the next time.
So yeah, so that pivot that you made while in Y Combinator, did that come from advice from them? Was that something you guys stumbled upon naturally yourselves, with combination of the two? How did that pivot happen?
It was something that we stumbled upon ourselves because we got into YC with that US stock trading app, right? But then we spent months trying to get the trying to get the license, but we couldn't get it. And after digging deeper into it, we just decided that we won't get this anytime soon and we don't have the time to keep on pursuing this. Talk to our group partners, they said it made sense. You haven't really spent a lot on this yet. So yeah, it's better to pivot and just start something new.
Awesome. If anyone has any questions around like the YC time frame, you can feel free to ask. But now I want to move to Twitter, because Michelle, you got really active, I think, end of June. And I was just
Mhm.
looking at your profile. Before
Mhm.
end of June, your Twitter profile is basically like a retweet machine. You don't have any of your own tweets. It's basically like retweeting everyone else. And then suddenly everything changed. You started to be more like outspoken. You have your own voice.
Mhm.
What happened there before and after?
Okay. So before June of 2021, I was a retweet machine because I was just starting to explore Twitter. I started to follow people and started to read their stories. So I retweeted the stories that I liked, basically. And I don't remember who exactly inspired me, but I with reading more stories, I felt like I enjoyed reading those stories, like about what they're working on, their observation, the lessons they learned. And I felt like if people kept on sharing their stories, many other people would enjoy that story, because I feel like people enjoy reading stories, and instead of reading a book about people's stories, I feel like reading tweets would be much more helpful because the commitment is much more lower. So when I realized that I enjoy reading those relatable stories, I decided to share my first story, like a story of my own. And I remember the first story that I shared was about getting into YC, like what we did to prepare for it, our interview experience, and those kind of stuff. And when writing about that tweet, I actually found my own joy in telling those stories. And after a few weeks of consistently trying to share my story, I actually started feeling the benefits. So not only that I was happy reading people's stories and telling my story, I also indirectly built a personal brand that eventually increased my company brand.
I really like how you keep using the word story instead of tweets. It's like when people talk about writing on Twitter, it's always like tweets, tweets. But it's very clear that you approach it from a storytelling angle.
Yes, I agree. So there are a couple types of build in public tweets, but I would say the only type that I enjoy are stories. I don't really see the value of tweets other than stories, because if those tweets are just facts, then I feel like Google is a better place for it. But if it's a personal story from someone, then that's definitely worth sharing, because I couldn't have seen that anywhere else. And if those people are not like very famous people, then they definitely won't have a book about it, right? Yeah.
Makes sense. So I know before we get to some more questions from the audience, I just want to connect the dots. So I see the 5 co-founders on Typedream. You're all like getting more active on Twitter. Is that like a consensus that you are like, oh, Twitter is a great place, we should all do it? Or is it just your personal choice?
I would say personal choice, but I think like I and one other co-founder, so only the two of us were active on Twitter, and I think the rest of my co-founders just saw the benefit of the two of us being on Twitter. So since the beginning of time in which me and my other co-founder were active on Twitter, we actually got to huge help from the Twitter community in terms of building my company type. Like the first one is product feedback. So since our early stage, our idea stage and private beta, when we first thought of the solution, which is Typedream, we immediately tweeted about transforming Notion pages to websites. We interviewed hundreds of people who were interested in validating my solution. And then once our solution were validated, our team quickly built an MVP and shared that MVP in public again. People then actually gave us real feedback. And what I mean by real feedback is, you know how if you share ideas to friends and family, most of them do not really understand what you're building and they're not in the space, so they would just praise your product. And since the Twitter community relates more to you, they actually give real feedback and helped us develop our product. And then aside of product, the community also helped my company in our launch, because since we shared our product and whatever we're doing in public, those people also helped us build the product. So when we announced to them that we're launching, they were equally excited as we were, because technically this product was also their product, right? So naturally, they just helped us build the hype around the launch. And I think my other co-founders just saw that the two benefits we experienced from Twitter, and they just decided to be more active on Twitter.
Yeah, that's so good. Like your potential customers are on Twitter and you're building in front of them, and then they can get involved so they feel attached or loyal to your product.
Yes.
That's amazing.
Yeah, they felt like they're also the owners.
Yeah, definitely.
In a sense.
Yeah.
Hey, Michelle. Thanks for being here.
Hey.
My question is, can you talk a little bit about your MVP and your ideas and hacking away with your co-founders, just that journey in general?
The journey in general, yes. So once we found the idea of transforming Notion into websites, we quickly shared that idea on Twitter. People from Twitter just helped us validate that idea, like why people like to use Notion to build websites. And then since we validated the idea, I just passed that to my engineering team. I'm a non-technical co-founder, by the way. So I just kind of passed that to my technical co-founder. They made the MVP and I quickly shared the MVP again in public, like for my Twitter friends to try the MVP. And then while they try the MVP, not only they report the bugs, of course, they also helped us with like what features are missing and then how they would like to be onboarded, like what's missing from the onboarding feature. And then most importantly is what I can do to make them pay. That's the most important thing. Yeah, and then I just kept on talking with them. So every time I have a feedback, I would discuss that with my team, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. If that makes sense, then our team would build the feature or the product. If it doesn't make sense, then we would just leave it aside. Once we built the new feature, we just threw it back to the public and let them comment. The thing that I learned is that we don't want to validate our idea ourselves because we would be biased. So it would be better for us to just throw whatever we made to the public.
I'm curious, Michelle, you said you talked to like more than 100 people and then you throw it out to them. How did that happen? Do you post out your stories and then you DM people to, connect and ask them to try it out? What's the exact process to get these people on board to test it?
I actually did the things that don't scale because I definitely can't do this every day, but I opened this website called Side Hustle Stack, Legion's creator economy website. And I opened each of their websites because a lot of websites on Side Hustle Stack was built on Notion. And I just kind of figured out who the co-founder was and just slide into their DMs. Like, do you want to try? Do you want to try? Or can we talk more about Notion's website? I'm really interested on what you built here. Yeah, so sliding to people's DMs and then of course tweeting about it and to let them DM me. So anything that doesn't scale like that, personal touch, one-on-one.
Got it. Love it. Love the hustle in the early days. That's the way to go. Yeah, don't wait for people to come to you.
Thank you for taking the time to talk with us and doing this AMA. So my question was, how did you go about positioning Typedream with other no-code options? Because there are so many of them. And to me, the Twitter is more geared toward indie hackers and, front end. Maybe that's just my feed that I see. But if you were to position a tool for B2B kind of interaction, would that be something approach, the Twitter approach, would it work?
Okay. So I would say in terms of the first question, which is where Typedream is in the no-code or low-code space, I would say most of you would be familiar with Webflow and Squarespace. So Webflow is on the harder end. They're mainly built for designers and people who understand CSS, because if you don't understand CSS, then it would be a pain to use Webflow. But although the learning curve is high, you can actually build very beautiful websites on Webflow as if you were to use code. And then on the other end, we have Squarespace, in which they provide you with templates. And it's very easy to use, but just little thing, even if you update just a little thing on the template, then it would completely break. It's just meant for you to use the template, accept it as it is, that's it. So I would say Typedream stands in the middle, in which it's very easy to use, low learning curve like Squarespace, but you can build beautiful websites like Webflow because of our beautiful defaults. And since the editor is like Notion, since people are familiar on how to edit things on Notion, then if you edit things on Typedream, it wouldn't break. Yeah, and then we also provide beautiful defaults, built-in assets, gradients, those kind of stuff. So it can be as beautiful as if you were to code it. And then in terms of your second question was, will Twitter work for B2B, right?
Right. So something like the Twitter, the feedback, the iteration process that you described. People were able to give you feedback because it was a consumer product.
About B2B, I don't know, to be honest, because my previous product, which was the authentication, the sign up or login for website builders, was B2B, right? Because we wanted companies to implement their sign up or login using our product, and we failed. So yeah, I would think I'm not the best person to ask about this, but so far these few months on Twitter, I don't really see B2B people there. I don't know. Do you see any, Kevin?
Personally, I think the line between B2B and B2C is blurred right now. Like we're
Okay.
all kind of B2B, we're all kind of B2C, right? We're solopreneurs, entrepreneurs. So when you sign up for Webflow, you're using your company account, but you're a one-man band. So it's quite blur. I guess a lot of people would learn the tool and then bring it to the workspace they're at and say, hey, maybe we can use that for the company website. So I don't know. Okay, Michelle, I have a personal curious question. We definitely have a lot of developer friends on Twitter. In general, do developers like to use tools like Typedream or other like no-code, low-code tools? Or do they like to code their own website, even if it's very simple?
I would say a few years back, they would definitely like to code their own website, because what I learned from a few years ago was that developers don't like to buy or pay things online if they can make it. But recently, since they learned more about the advices on Twitter, such that you just want to make something quickly and launch right away and not bother spending months or weeks just to make something that might not work. And since more and more people, including developers, understand that launching is more important than actually making a product perfect, they actually start to see the value of no-code tools, including Typedream.
Got you. Yeah, that satisfies my curiosity. Yeah, sure. I'm thinking we can
I
move.
agree. I agree.
I think the ease of use is very important. Like set it up in minutes and then focus on the product.
The product itself, yes.
Yeah.
Because
So
making a landing page using code is not that easy, right? It would spend you at least weeks. So yeah, once people know more and more the importance of just launching and focusing on the product, then I don't doubt that no-code tools, including Typedream, would work.
yeah, and I think my biggest learning personally is that if you start with the landing page, you spend too much time and it's gonna change anyway. So might as well like delay that the hardcore things to a later date.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about building in public. I know you mentioned the storytelling side is attractive to you, like the only type of tweets that you like to do. But when you first started building in public, you learn it from someone? Did you check out how people are doing it? Or did you just figure out, okay, that's about being transparent. Let me just do that. How did it happen?
I definitely followed more and more people on Twitter, and I was lucky enough that I followed the right people that led me into more building in public Twitter. And in terms of figuring out the type of tweet that I liked, which are stories, I just spent a lot of time reading people's build in public tweet and just found a pattern that I really liked, which was stories.
I feel like a lot of people have this question, like you're just telling stories, tweeting, but how does that connect to finding customers? You tweet out these stories and then what do you do next?
Finding customers. I would say I tweet about two things. The first one is my personal story as a co-founder, as a startup builder. And the second one, I also tweet about my company, like where my company is right now, what features I'm building, what difficulties I'm facing that week. And once people read more and more of your company tweets, when you ask for feedback about your product, then they would respond and help you build the product with their feedback, as I mentioned earlier. So they helped with the feedback, and then we iterate the product. We share the product iteration with them again. And it made them love the product because we built it based on their feedback, right? And if people love our product, then it just goes naturally in which they would just influence their friends and families to check us out and eventually use our product. So that's how we found our early customers, by building it in public and just being transparent of whatever we did.
So you're saying, like, in order to find customer, you don't actually need to promote anything. Basically, you just get feedback, kind of put things out there, and they would naturally come for a different reason or even get a plan.
Yes, that's what I experienced. And yeah, at least that was what I experienced. And I really don't agree of promoting your product, especially on Twitter, because it's just not the place to do sales. And if people follow you to find an inspiration, then it would be really bad if you just do sales or marketing language to them.
Yeah, I completely agree,
Yeah.
because I'm writing my new book in public, and I try to look at what tweets work the best. It's usually the tweet that I'm asking feedback, like, I have this chapter title. Can you tell me what you're thinking? And then a lot of people will respond. But then if I put a video up about me explaining the book or the course, then no one responds.
Yeah, I feel like Twitter is just not the place to do marketing or sales.
Yeah, that's good. Like, it's a very subtle way of getting eyeballs on whatever you're saying. Do you have any thoughts about, like, what you want to share out there and what you're like, well, it's not worth sharing? Because a lot of people, like, I work with people who want to build in public, and the top 5, like, this is one of the top 5 questions there. Like, I don't know what to share and what not to share. It's so hard to differentiate. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I think I touched a bit on this earlier, but what to share are unique stories that people cannot find anywhere else. So stories that are personally from you, from your experience. And what not to share are facts in which people can just Google.
Facts, do you mean like consistency is key, that kind of things? Like wisdom?
Wisdom is fine, but not fine. Wisdom is actually really great, because usually when people tweet about wisdom, they also give their own take on it. Like, for example, because consistency is key. I used to tweet every single day, and I grew my followers from 0 to 1,000, blah, blah, blah. Like, the thing that interests me the most is their unique take on it.
Like personal perspective, your own story, so no one can copy you.
Hey, Michelle. Yeah, I was thinking, are there other channels for you to build in public, or you only do that with Twitter? Like maybe a blog, or, or YouTube, Twitch?
I personally only use Twitter, but I know that people also use indiehackers.com, the forum, and they say it's a really good forum. Yeah,
you're right. Okay, and actually, sometimes I'm confusing a bit between building in public and distribution channels in my mind. But like, are you like in terms of distribution channels, do you use like Reddit, or do you try other platforms or Quora?
Distribution, I use YouTube, Reddit, Slack. So I am a part of a lot of NoCode Slack communities, and Discord as well.
Okay. And which one do you like? Do you feel that the users are more like, it's easier just to maybe like communicate with users? Or...
In terms of distribution, right?
Yeah.
I would say Slack and Discord communities, because you definitely need to choose the correct community. So because if you're a part of the right community, then the members of that community are usually there with a high intention. Like, they really want to make something, or they really want to grow. So they would really benefit from the connections from like one community member and the other.
Okay, thanks.
I do have a follow-up on that. Like, a lot of people, like, it seems to be a straightforward strategy. Get into communities and then just try to get your potential customer there. But it's not as straightforward as go in and then like shout, Typedream, right? How do you approach it? How should people approach it?
So I approach it the same way as I approach Twitter. So I really hate sales and marketing. So everywhere I go, I don't promote Typedream. Instead, I built a personal brand. So I come there and introduce myself as a YC founder, as a startup founder, and if they're interested on whatever I'm doing, then my DM is always open. And yeah, it's all started with like building connections and relationships, and then indirectly they will check out Typedream and tell their friends. But it's never about promoting Typedream itself. So a lot of efforts, but I think that's the way for it to work.
Totally. I'm a big fan of like genuine relationships. It's
Yeah.
not gonna scale, but at a certain point you feel like, wow, you have a lot of friends around you to support you. And that's pretty much how this community survive until today. It's because so many people support
Yeah.
you. Yeah. Do you have like a methodology or approach to building more relationships online? Because there are probably a lot of people would DM you, but then they might not be the right people at the right time. And then you would also reach out to other people. Any ideas around this?
I don't have a unique tip, but what I learned from myself was that I forced myself to just talk to people more, because before Twitter, I never really talked to people I don't know, especially people online. And I just figured out when I was in Twitter, I just had to communicate with people more in order to build more relationships. So yeah, I just forced myself to respond to DMs, just respond to tweets, and eventually after a few months, it's not so bad, and it's not even like, it doesn't even feel like a task anymore. It's just like responding to chats.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really want to get more people to put relationships as the number one priority.
I completely agree with the previous point, actually. So I think going in with the giving mindset actually helps a lot in building relationships. So I've met some new friends. So they are like founders too. It's been great. So my question is about finding co-founders. So building a product and starting a company could be a very lonely journey. If you're a solo founder, you could feel like you're shooting. So I know you met your co-founders at your previous computer science academy, I guess. So what's your opinion on getting it so you can hack together or something? What's a good way to go about finding co-founders?
Yeah, I would say there are 3 ways. The first one is just to look at people around you. So maybe your classmates, people you know, the same goal and interest. And if you can't find any in your close circle, then start joining a lot of communities, because I know that there are a lot of communities out there, and interact with them, build relationships, and find the right people for you. The third one would be to utilize co-founder matching platforms. I know YC has one, and I think it's open to public. It's called the Y Combinator co-founder matching. And then I'm pretty sure there are a lot of other platforms that does co-founder matching as well.
Thank you.
All right. I personally have one last question. So, well, building in public is nice. You get your audience involved. They fall in love with your product through that process. But Michelle, I'm interested to know, did the mindset of building in public like affect you as a person? Like the way you think about things, the way like being vulnerable, that's pretty difficult. So curious to hear about that.
Yes. As a person, let me think about this. So I would say build in public helped me develop communication skill. So previously I had all these experiences, but I just never shared them. And by building in public, I learned how to mask or just transform my experiences into a story that would help others to learn from. So I definitely developed some communication skills. I also feel calmer because I'm lucky enough to have a co-founder, but I imagine myself, if I'm a solo founder, I don't have anyone, then the community would be a really, really good place to share whatever I'm facing as a founder, because it's not easy to face things alone and not have anyone to talk to. But with the community, then people can share their journey, ask for feedback, ask for help. So people are just never really lonely, even though they're a solo founder. And then actually, I'd like to share a big thing that me and my co-founders realized recently from building in public. Aside of just sharing my experience, I would say building in public helped us find what we really want to do in this world. So I know that making a company, the number one goal would be to make money, but these recent few months, we just realized that it's so much more than just making money. It's about having a representation. It's about inspiring others. So I'm from Indonesia, where a lot of people are not in the tech world yet. So it took us 6 years to get to this point, because we didn't have any like role model to look up to. But we believe that if now Indonesians see that we are here and we have a company in the US, and it would make it at least faster for them if they want to also build a company here in the US. So I believe being an inspiration is just so much more than making money.
Thank you for saying that, because personally, I also realized that after years of hustling in the startup world, but you realize it so early. So that's really awesome. Yeah.
So coming to the end here, what's one thing that we can all start doing that would help us with our building in public experience, help us grow our audience, help us just be better at building in public? What's one thing we can start doing right away?
I would say just be consistent and just show up every day to tweet and share about whatever you're facing today, be it something you're making, something you experienced in the past, what you learned, your failures, anything, and do it consistently. It doesn't have to be like really cool or something that's really big. I think during the early days, it's more important to just show up every day.
Michelle, so building a company can be very overwhelming, being on Twitter, all the other competitors in the same space outside. How do you avoid the anxiety? How do you go about navigating it?
Like, are you asking about how to avoid the anxiety of looking at the different competitors out there?
Yeah,
So
the FOMO.
I read about this one saying in which you will most likely die of suicide than of murder. So I would say ignore the competitors, don't worry about them, focus on your own product. Because at the end of the day, this world is not a zero-sum game. Like, for example, what's a good e-commerce? Like, I know this is not a really good example, but let's say both Amazon and eBay are the exact same e-commerce. Both Amazon and eBay survive out there. And there are a lot of other companies in which they do almost exactly the same thing as another company, and they're both big and they survive. Like in the case of Website Builder, for example, both Webflow and Squarespace are really big, right? They're both website builders. So yeah, don't really worry about your competitor. This world is not a zero-sum game. Just focus on building your products, find your unique take on it.
Michelle, so it's nice to learn about your journey. Is there anything else you would like to tell us, like where you are with the company, where you are personally, so we can like follow your journey a bit more?
Where I am with the company. Okay, so I think recently I've been talking to Typedream users, and they struggle with this one thing in which once they've built a website on Typedream, they don't know who to consult to, like what people think about their landing page, like just any feedback. So we decided to make this feedback program or showcase program in which we would share their landing page on our Twitter account and ask for real feedback. Because as I mentioned earlier, it's really hard for your friends or family to actually give a real feedback instead of just praising you. So yeah, we utilized our community from our Twitter account to tweet about their website and ask the community to actually give them a real feedback. And we've been receiving positive feedback from our users in which the community really helped them update and made their landing pages.
That's really awesome. You're taking an extra step to help your users.
Yeah, help our users succeed. Yes.
Cool. I think we're wrapping up here. Do you have any last words to share with us?
Last words. I would say, okay, here's a piece of wisdom for me. I would say, as I mentioned earlier, nobody knows the road to success. So while you have time, keep on trying, fail often, fail cheap, because failing in tech is cheap because there's literally no capital. Back when the world was still in the industry world, the generation above us would spend millions or hundreds of dollars to actually build a factory, and if they fail, then they would lose all those dollars. But in the tech world, you don't really spend anything in building. You would probably just spend small things in subscription and even way less time than actually building a factory. So fail cheap, fail often. You will learn from your mistakes, you will avoid them, and you'll become better.
Yeah. At best, you can just smash your laptop, right? If you're really
Yes,
mad.
exactly. And that's $2,000, not like a whole factory, right?
Right. You can afford it. And you said, I think before this session, you said you have something for our public lab community members.
Oh, yes. Actually, my team and I just decided to give 10% discount to Typedream in case any of you are interested to try us out. And I will share the promo code here. One moment. To the chat here at Zoom.
Sure. That's very kind of you. Thank you.
Yes,
And I will make
we're
sure
happy
to
to do
share this
this.
with the other people who are not attending this AMA as well.
Yeah, that would be great.
Our last ritual is to take a group photo. All right, I'm gonna count 3, 2, 1, and I'll take a screenshot. All right. Okay, Mira has this victory gesture up, so I'm gonna do it. Okay, 3, 2, 1. All right. Thank you so much, Michelle. Thank you for sparing your time. Thank you, everyone, for joining me. I guess this
Thank you.
a wrap up.
It's really great.
We'll see you around.